Hi, this is Teddy, and today you're listening to Kristin Urquiza, founder of Marked by COVID, on Two Broads Talking Politics. Stay home and save lives.
Hi, everyone. This is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics, and I'm on today with Kristin Urquiza. After Kristins Dad died in June from COVID, she started Marked by COVID to help share the stories of people who have had COVID and help inspire better public health practices. So welcome, Kristin. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Kelly.
Yeah, so I thought it would be great to start if you could just tell me a little bit about your dad and who he was, and sort of the circumstances then leading up to his death.
Sure. My dad was a great guy. The thing I remember the most about him actually comes from people around him. He was incredibly generous with his time. He was the type of person that if you needed a last minute helper to come help move a couch when you were moving, that was the guy my dad was. He was the guy on speed dial who would say, oh, okay, let me see. I'll be there. Is 30 minutes okay? And I know that people across the greater West Valley of Phoenix where he lived are missing not just that generosity, but the smile and energy he brought into the room. He had such a positive outlook on life. He loved being around people. And, part of that is what is so tragic about his passing. He was a lifelong Republican. He voted for the president, the governor of Arizona. He listened to them, believed what they had to say. And so when the states started reopening, and in particular, Arizona was one of the places where there was a cavalier reopening, where they took the light switch approach. And the governor took this several steps further by going on television, radio, and saying, listen, we're on the other side of this pandemic. If you don't have a pre-existing condition, it's safe to be out there. Take a loved one out to dinner, catch up with some friends. My dad took that at face value. And when I engaged him on sort of his reopening strategy and was like, Dad, I don't think it's safe to actually meet up with folks in the community, his response was, I know you care about me and are concerned, but why would the governor and the president say it's safe to be out there if it's not actually safe? And those are the exact words from his mouth. I could not compete with that. I could not compete with the megaphone that the White House has, the megaphone that the governor's mansion has, with the platform of Fox News that reiterates these lies. And my dad got sick. He got sick within 2 weeks. He woke up with a fever, chills, a cough, symptoms similar to what we recently learned President Trump woke up with. And that was the beginning of his 19-day struggle with COVID-19 that led to his untimely death.
So I want to talk some then about Marked by COVID and what you're doing. But first, I would just want to ask, we're recording this on World Mental Health Day. How are you? How are you doing? How are you coping?
I have been thinking a lot about World Mental Health Day leading up to today and on today so far. And I'm not okay. And I feel like it's important to acknowledge that. And I think it's also important to say, I am not okay, but I'm finding peace with that through my activism. I also, recognize that throughout the course of my life, I've struggled with depression and anxiety. And so I have been seeing a counselor on a weekly basis, which has been incredibly helpful. I also I'm taking medication to help manage my depression and anxiety, and I have no qualms about being public with that, because I think it's really important that we see that I'm not doing this alone. I'm doing this also because I'm trying to manage all of the emotions that come with it. And that is enabling me to be okay enough to be present and fight.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so sorry that you've had to go through this. I mean, certainly I think for all of us, I haven't gone through that kind of traumatic experience. And I'm also, in counseling and on medication. It's just, it's a tough time for everyone. And to have that added stress is just, it's terrible. So then talk to me about this activism that you're doing, about what you're doing with Marked by COVID. And did this start with the obituary that you wrote for your dad?
Yeah. So Marked by COVID is officially now a nonprofit. I co-founded it with my partner, Kristin, and we launched it at my dad's funeral. And it's serving as a campaign and platform to help uplift stories of folks impacted or marked by COVID. And it's not just folks who've lost loved ones. It's also survivors who have experienced incredible, symptoms, long haul symptoms, to folks who are on the front lines and essential workers who don't have the privilege to Netflix and chill and are making impossible decisions between paying rent and, their own health and safety. And in addition to sharing their stories, we're also working with folks to have the platform to hold public officials accountable, whether that's on the local or state level or on the federal level, really pointing out policy and leadership failure. And I've been working with folks on helping them feel confident and get training and, being able to be effective storytellers. Honestly, people don't need much support. They're wonderful storytellers. I think they just need a confidence boost from time to time. And, for me, I did a series of things when my dad passed. I wrote what I now call an honest obituary. And that was where, I followed the obituary template of what we're used to of, this is the person, this is what they liked in life, this is how they died, this is who they left behind. But I took it one step further and just named the truth that my dad's death was needless and preventable and a result of politicians continuing to downplay the virus and not come up with strategies to mitigate risk because brown bodies like my dad are expendable. And it gained a lot of attention. And since then, we've been helping to raise money to sponsor other families' obituaries, which I had never thought about this before, but obituaries have been traditional tools of exclusion. They're expensive. They're hundreds of dollars to run. If you're a person who's living already on the margins, who is experiencing a COVID death, which is typically unexpected and quick, you're not sitting on thousands of dollars to arrange funeral services. So cutting out a $500 obituary is a line item that can go, but these people's stories, they matter. And I ran into so many people in the beginning of my journey with Marked by COVID who gave me the feedback of, if I had had the money to write an obituary, I would have said the same exact thing. Thank you.
So if listeners want to help that and want to help make sure that people can share their obituaries, is there a place they can donate, something that they can do for that?
Yeah, absolutely. So our website, markedbycovid.com/donate, is a secure website to make a contribution. We're 100% volunteer run. I've actually taken a leave of absence from my job, and I'm living off my savings right now to be able to do this work. So it's all crowdsourced funding, and it goes, money that we raise is going into both the obituary project, but then also the other training and support for our activists to ensure that their stories are being able to be shared and that they're gaining the skills, training, and support that they need to be able to be effective communicators and for COVID justice as well.
So you've been able to tell your story widely, but also directly to Joe Biden. Do you, in telling him this story, what was your impression of his reaction to it? And are you confident that he will take these stories with him if and when he gets to the White House?
I am confident in that. I feel like one of the things that Vice President Biden really brings to this moment is compassion, empathy, and so much experience with traumatic grief. And in sharing my story with the Bidens, they really see the humanity in this and the responsibility as political leaders to tackle this pandemic from a human perspective. And I also think in addition to that, Vice President Biden fundamentally understands that there is no such thing as economic health without public health. Mm-hmm. And that is a false choice that we've been spoon-fed and force-fed by the Trump administration and Republicans in power, that we need to choose one or the other. And it's simply not true at all. And, both from the lens of understanding the political nuance of, how we need to approach a coordinated, data-driven response to this pandemic, but fundamentally caring about humanity is the formula we need to get ahead of this pandemic to prevent additional needless deaths.
And on the other side of that coin, of course, is the current president, who not just has put lots of people at risk with his rhetoric, but put you directly at risk at the debate. So you were at the debate. How did you feel when you realized that you had been at this debate where he and a number of his guests had actually been had COVID?
That was such a hard 24 to 48 hours as that story was unfolding. So I was a guest of Vice President Biden's at the debate. I was in the front row. I was sitting 15 feet away from President Trump and the Trump family, who were not wearing masks during the debate, despite there being a mask ordinance and commitments to masks being worn. And I was flabbergasted. And then, as I reflected upon it later, I realized that what had played out in that debate hall was just a microcosm of what we've been experiencing for the last several months, but also the last several years, where it is a confluence of two things. One, the president of the United States really doesn't care about anybody other than himself. And two, the rules don't apply to him, in his opinion. And, how that played out in the debate hall was that every single person in attendance there had committed to a COVID test that day. I got there early. I did my test. I self-quarantined until I got the test results. I got armbanded, and then over the course of making my way into the debate hall, there's obviously several security checkpoints. In addition to checking for what you would expect of weapons, our wristbands were checked and scanned to ensure that we were COVID negative. So there were precautions that all of us took to ensure the safety of ourselves and one another. But, Donald Trump and his family arrived so late on Air Force One to avoid that, because they do not care about the rules and they do not care about human life. There were people in his entourage who were vectors of COVID, putting not only myself at risk, but the members of Congress in there, the janitors in there, the construction workers who were breaking down and putting up the stage. And having a front row seat to the fallout of that just underscored that the president of the United States Donald J. Trump is the most dangerous person on this planet.
And I think, I don't know, for just a brief moment when I heard that he was diagnosed, I had this hope that he would learn something from it, it was maybe a fleeting hope. I didn't really believe it, but I hoped that it would happen. And yet he has doubled down on such dangerous rhetoric. I mean, how does that strike you when he says something like, don't be afraid of it, you'll do what I did, go to the hospital, get better, everything will be great. I mean, your dad didn't have that chance. Millions of Americans don't have that chance.
Yeah. I mean, it shows this concept that I spoke about at the DNC of the two Americas. There's Donald Trump's America, and then there's the America that my dad died in. My dad, when exhibiting the exact same symptoms as President Trump, as Chris Christie, was told to go home and only return to the hospital if and when he couldn't breathe. My dad went home and for 5 days struggled until he got to that threshold where then my mom took him to the hospital and never was able to pick him back up. What would have happened to my dad had he been able to get the type of care out of, quote, an abundance of caution? It's not just my dad. Every single person that I have talked to has had some sort of similar story where their loved one didn't get the type of care that we all deserve. I've talked to families who, when calling an ambulance, have told me that the ambulance company was so overburdened that they had to wait multiple hours to get an ambulance to pick up their loved one. It's just the tip of the iceberg here. And so for every single person who has gone through this experience or a COVID survivor or have lost a loved one, seeing this play out over the course of the last week has been so traumatizing. Mm-hmm. And then whenever it comes to, the president's double down on his rhetoric, it adds additional insult to injury. It continues to push this notion that everyone has access to equitable care, which is simply not true. And not only is it not true, it is particularly not true for the communities that are experiencing this virus the hardest. So Black people, Indigenous communities, other people of color, the elderly. These are folks that have been on the front lines of the virus, and it just breaks my heart to know that the president is continuing to create conditions for the virus to thrive and that more innocent people will die as a result of that.
So how do we all then help get these stories out there and make sure that people do know what it's really like for people who don't get the kind of care that Donald Trump gets, and really help inspire better health practices, making sure that people are social distancing and wearing masks and not running back out to restaurants as soon as the government says it's okay to? Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a few action items. I mean, the first thing that's on my mind right now is vote. Vote as if your life depends on it, because it actually does this time around, more so than ever. Making sure people in your community vote and that people have a plan for voting, just not taking that for granted. We also know that the president and others are, actively trying to suppress voters. And so just vote early. When it comes to, COVID and COVID stories and marked by COVID, I would recommend, following all our channels on social media, donating so that we can help uplift stories. But also the thing that I've been really leaning into recently is just being honest with how I'm doing in the circles that I'm at, allowing myself permission to fully show up, fully show up in my workplace, fully show up in my conversations. And I don't answer the question, how are you doing, with like, oh, I'm fine. Mm-hmm. I acknowledge the fact that we are going through the most dangerous public health crisis of our lifetime, and that we're not okay as a result of it. And I think the more that we embrace that we're not okay, the more that people aren't going to feel alone. And one thing I've seen through my own activism is that by showing up and being honest, people start showing up with me. And I completely believe in the power of collective action, and that having tremendous long-term positive political impacts on our society and our culture. So I just encourage people to show up in your spaces.
Is there anything else that you want to make sure we talk about?
Oh, goodness, what a question. I think that something else I have been playing around with a bit is reminding myself that it doesn't have to be this way. And reminding myself that we are worthy and deserving, and that we have had positive models of benevolent leadership before. And we cannot lose hope in this moment. Because if we lose hope, we don't have anything to fight for. And despite my, honesty with my own well-being, I have an abundance of hope in me. And I have an abundance of love in me. And when I'm not doing well, I think about the world that I want to leave behind for the next generation of folks. I think about my cousins who are in their 20s and about their future. I think about people I don't even know and children who have just this abundance of love and abundance of wonder. And I feel an incredible responsibility to help make the world a place where they can reach their future potential and their human potential. And yeah, I think it's important for us to allow ourselves space to imagine the world that we're working towards.
That is beautiful. Thank you, Kristin. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for your activism, and thank you for your honesty. It's so important, and I think it's clearly moving people, and I hope people will continue to listen and allow themselves to be honest too.
My pleasure. It was so wonderful to get to connect this way, and I look forward to staying in touch.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for listening to Two Broads Talking Politics, part of the Dimcast Podcast Network. Our theme song is called Are You Listening? Off of the album Elephant Shaped Trees by the band Immunuri, and we're using it with permission of the band. Our logo and other original artwork is by Matthew Weflin and was created for use by this podcast. You can contact us at twobroadstalkingpolitics@gmail.com or on Twitter or Facebook at Two Broads Talk. You can find all of our episodes at twobroadstalkingpolitics.com or anywhere podcasts are found.